Now, before you actually start doing your acting, you also went to law school, right?
I did. Not only did I go to law school, I passed the bar on my first try.
So what kind of law were you practicing or wanting to practice?
Well, if I had practiced, I never did, because literally as soon as I got done taking the bar, I started chasing the brass ring of entertainment, and luckily never had to fall back on the law. But criminal law was the thing that interested me the most. It just is intriguing, and essentially is if you view the courtroom as a theater, which it really is, right. That just kind of appealed to my acting interests.
Hey, I'm your host, Scott Savlov, and with us, not in his car and not talking about cars yet, is Chris Jacobs. In your backdrop, Chris, has lots of automotive.
Yeah, these are all renderings from Overhaulin. These are all, Chip would do a rendering on each episode, each car. So I've got a full wall. You're just seeing a small portion of it.
So basically, the show is designed so you don't have to decorate your house.
That's right. Yeah, I've got most of my house is in Hughes art. So it works. There's a theme developing, and it's all Hughes.
That's awesome. Well, most people would know you in that space today, or I guess from your career, but your career has like an ebb and flow where you've gone automotive into entertainment and then into sports and then back to automotive. Do you categorize automotive in your world as entertainment?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly the portion of automotive that I'm in, and hopefully it's more flow than ebb. Hopefully it will continue to flow and not ebb. But yeah, I mean, certainly, I've been in the auction hosting space now for almost 10 years. And so that's certainly entertainment. Overhaulin was certainly entertainment. Most of the car stuff that I do is entertainment. That's on camera anyway. I do a bunch of non-television related automotive stuff. I would definitely classify it as entertainment.
So you were born in Chicago. I've had the good fortune of you coming to a golf event. We were just talking about it prior to recording. A golf event that's based in Chicago. Yep. And I remember when we first met, you're like, well, I'm from Chicago. And you seem to have the vibe of a Chicago person, not knocking LA, not knocking where I am, San Diego, but you kind of know Chicago. You have that look and feel of a Chicagoan. How would you describe your hometown in that area?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm very, very proud to be born and raised in Chicago. I've been out in California since 1988, came out here for college and stayed out here. But I try to make it back to Chicago at least 4 to 5 times a year. Always for the Bears home opener, always for at least a couple Cubs games during the summer. And then, a couple of times in between, Christmas, if we can fit it into our schedule. And certainly the golf tournament you were talking about is coming up in June. I always make sure to put that in my calendar. And I love the city. I love the vibe of the city. And I grew up in the north suburbs, the North Shore. So, very, very nice place to grow up.
In Winnetka, did you grow up in
Glencoe, which is one more town up from Winnetka. Yeah.
Okay.
And just a couple towns south from where we play that golf tournament up in Lake Forest. So obviously a beautiful, great place to grow up. And I try to, rely on that kind of mentality and those roots that I have in Chicago. And, it's like I said, I'll forever be very, very proud of being a Chicagoan.
You went to high school in Winnetka, which I just mentioned. Winnetka is one of those, if you've never been there before, I would say it's an old guard kind of town. It's almost like a storybook where Lake Forest, which you mentioned, is where like Home Alone and all those John Hughes movies are based kind of that.
Well,
Home Alone area.
Actually, Home Alone is actually the house from Home Alone is in Winnetka.
Okay.
And, Tom Cruise in Risky Business, he lives in Glencoe, the town that I grew up in. Ferris Bueller, that house where the Ferrari goes out the back of the garage, that's in Highland Park, which is in between Glencoe and Lake Forest. All the John Hughes movies are based in and around the North Shore, which is really cool. Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink. Pretty in Pink, the church. I'm sorry, 16 Candles. The church in 16 Candles is in Glencoe. We walk by there all the time. It's pretty cool to see all those kind of hometown spots in those John Hughes movies. I love John Hughes films.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, John Hughes was unfortunately, he's no longer with us. One of those writer-director types that of my generation, my era of loving films. But for the Chicagoan, is he somebody that you looked at like he's one of your own?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, how is your perception of that?
Especially being on the North Shore. Weird Science was another one. Weird Science, the mall scenes are all filmed in Northbrook Court, which is where I used to hang out as a kid. We take a lot of pride in John Hughes. He is definitely one of our own, not just in Chicago, but particularly the North Shore.
North Shore. Yeah. Interesting. For you in high school, did you play different sports?
I did. I played hockey and I played baseball. So it was, baseball in the summer and hockey in the winter.
But a typical upbringing in that area where it was watching sports. I mean, it just seems those sports teams, you live and die for whether it be the Bears or the Cubs. If you're in the North Shore, the Cubs.
Yep.
And of course the Bulls. And in your era growing up, the Bulls were actually really good.
Well, I was 21 years old when they won their first championship in '91. So, there was not a bigger Bulls fan on the planet during the Jordan years than me. And then when Jackson came out to the Lakers in LA, I was the biggest Laker fan on the planet. It was a lot of fun watching those teams and winning all those championships. I mean, we were so spoiled. And then also being a huge hockey fan, I had Kings season tickets for 4 years. They won the Stanley Cup 2 of those 4 years. And it seemed like every year for about 6 or 7 years, it was the Kings and the Blackhawks in the Western Conference Finals. So I was like completely spoiled. Not torn at all. No, not torn. Blackhawks all the way.
Okay.
I was a Kings fan because I'm here in LA. But you asked me to choose. It's Blackhawks all the way. I was not torn at all. Let me make that very clear. I'm a Chicago sports guy, not an LA sports guy. I still follow the Cubs every day. I'm very excited about the draft that's coming up in a couple weeks. I think that Ryan Poles, the new Bears GM, has made some amazing moves, trading that number 1 draft pick to Carolina and the haul that he got and the free agent signings that he's had so far. I can't wait to see what he does with the draft. I mean, I'm a huge believer in Justin Fields, so I'm hoping that within 5 years we at least make it to a Super Bowl, if not win one.
You're not a Bears fan or anything. Not at all.
We've had season tickets since they moved to Soldier Field in 1971. And
wow.
I mean, I've been to hundreds of Bears games and it's like I said, I never miss an opener. I haven't missed a home opener in probably 10 or 11 years. Yeah.
When you were in high school, what were you wanting to be? I mean, what were you thinking you're going to do?
I thought I was going to be an actor. That was my dream, was to be, a big movie star. And
is that right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's why I came out to LA to pursue entertainment. And I started in '95, and for 8 years, I was I was able to scratch out a living doing a bunch of commercials, some TV guest spots, some movies. And in that era, you could make a year's salary and be covered by doing, 3 commercials. if they were nationals.
Right.
It's not like that anymore. You have to work a lot more in order to really make a living as an actor.
But for you went to college in LA. You went to Whittier.
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
How'd you pick Whittier? Out of curiosity.
Just small liberal arts school that was in, LA County. I wanted to be near enough to Hollywood, but I also didn't want to like get lost in this super huge school. So Whittier just kind of fit the bill. And so in 2003, I went on an audition for Overhaulin and didn't really know, what I was auditioning for. They wanted someone who was an actor and could therefore improvise the pranks. So I just, I got lucky on the audition, and Courtney Hanson had already been cast, and we had a little, what they call a chemistry test between the two of us.
Right.
And it went well. I literally had one audition, and then I got a call like a week later saying I had the job. And I went down to this shop in Huntington Beach and met the guys, and we just started rolling. The first season, they ordered 7 episodes. I don't really think they knew, what it was going to be like or what they were going to have. And we got lightning in a bottle. It was really amazing. And then season 2 was 15 episodes. Season 3 was 29 episodes. We were pumping out a new car every 10 days. And then, they're still showing it today, 20 years later, hard to believe. And we made, I think, a total of about 161 or 2 episodes. Wow. Over the span of 17 years. So we started in 2003, and the last episode we made was in February of 2020. So the longevity of that show,
great long run.
Yeah, and it's spun off tons of other opportunities for me, which I'm still capitalizing on. Thank God they still show Overhaulin, because it keeps me relevant and out there, I guess. And so, hosting Meekum Auctions now is my main gig. And I do a video podcast called 0 to 60 on the new Speed Vision Network. And and I'm an ambassador for Haggerty. I'm an ambassador for Griot's Garage. I'm an ambassador for Radford Racing School. I'm an ambassador for Wrench, which is a mobile mechanic service, and their sister corporation, which is Lemon Squad, which is a mobile inspection service. So Overhaulin basically gave me a career and gave me a life in automotive.
Now, before you actually start doing your acting, you also went to law school, right?
I did. Not only did I go to law school, I passed the bar on my first try, which I still consider my greatest.
Which is a huge thing in California, especially. Mm-hmm. So what kind of law were you practicing or wanting to practice?
Well, if I had practiced, I never did. Because literally, as soon as I got done taking the bar, I started chasing the brass ring of entertainment, and luckily never had to fall back on the law. But criminal law was the thing that interested me the most. It just is intriguing, and essentially is if you view the courtroom as a theater, which it really is. Right. That just kind of appealed to my acting interests in entertainment. And I love to argue, so that played into it too. I think I would have been a pretty good trial attorney. In fact, I aced my trial practice course in law school because I guess I was born without the gene of fear of public speaking, which is, I think, why I do so well hosting live television.
Right.
Yeah, and hosting in particular. Reading the prompter is something that always came very easy to me. It's nothing that I ever had any training in. It just, I have this ability to kind of think 2 sentences in front of what's coming out of my mouth. So if you're, people don't understand how hard it is to read a prompter until they try to do it and make it sound natural. So I've got a pretty good handle on that. And then I just have a knack for live TV. You give me a microphone and a subject and roll camera. Let's go.
For you, how challenging was it to make yourself go to auditions?
Very challenging, and is still challenging. I mean, I don't really audition that much anymore. I do, occasionally. But auditioning is so hard, and it's just like, it's more of it's more of a challenge to your mental fortitude than anything. It really is not a great representation of what your skill set is, because you're thinking to yourself the entire time you're auditioning, it's like, I'm blowing this, or I'm terrible, or this is not what they want, or this is not what I planned, or I was much better at home when I was rehearsing my audition. Or conversely, you're thinking to yourself, oh man, this is going really well. Oh, I'm definitely going to get this job. And then you never do. So in the end, it's always, a mind screw. It really is. I loathe auditioning. I never thought I was good at auditioning. If someone asks me what my advice is in auditioning, I say, just let it go. Just, be yourself, I guess, because that's the one thing no one else can be is you. But I can't stand auditioning. So there was never a method of making myself good at auditioning. You just get lucky, basically.
How did you get, of your early roles prior to Overhaulin, which you talked about a second ago, you were like on 2.5 Men.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
It was amazing. And I got to do a very small scene, a very memorable scene with Charlie Sheen. And that was a lot of fun. And again, just got lucky on the audition. It was like they could have picked any one of the actors who read for the role and they would have been great. And then I actually became friends with Charlie because he's a car guy too. He's got a nice little car collection. He was actually an insider for us on Overhaulin for his buddy Tony Todd, whose car we overhauled. So that was pretty cool. And I remember it was 2003 when I did 2.5 Men. And that was the Bartman year, if people are familiar with Cubs playoff history. That was the Cubs were on their way to the World Series, and then Steve Bartman interfered with Moises Alou at Wrigley Field, catching a foul ball. So, that whole thing. But I remember watching one of the previous playoff games in Charlie's trailer because, he's a huge baseball fan too. He's a Reds fan. And when he found out I was a Cubs fan and they were in the playoffs that year, he's like, oh, man, come and watch the game in my trailer, man. It's much better. Just sitting here and be comfortable. Yeah. So I remember sitting in Charlie's trailer watching the Cubs playoff game, and that was kind of the beginning of our friendship.
Are you guys still friendly today?
We are. Yeah. We haven't talked a lot in the last couple of years, but for a while there, like in that little zone, we were pretty good friends. We speak pretty regularly.
You when you were doing the transition from, say, acting, like you had mentioned, like 2.5 Men, you actually went into entertainment reporting, right? So you were on like the Insider, and then I remember you were on like
that was a little bit later. I actually got Overhaulin in 2003, and then I was on the Insider and ET from 2009 to 2012, while Overhaulin was in a little bit of a break. Okay. And then when Overhaulin came back in 2012, I was actually doing both for a little while. And then I left ET and then got back into the car world full time. I consider those years of doing entertainment reporting kind of like the dark years of my career. I really didn't enjoy it at all. I don't
That's
like.
What I was going to ask you if you enjoyed that experience.
No. I did not at all. That's not my personality. I don't like asking like gotcha questions, and I certainly don't like asking people what they're wearing on the red carpet and BS like that.
You don't do that now. Like you go to like different shops, you see some guy under a car. Excuse me.
The answer is always Dickies and a t-shirt it's the same answer every time. But no, I did not like that experience at all. I respect the profession. It's great what they do. I liked everybody who I worked with very much, but it just wasn't me.
Was it hard for you? I'm not talking about the on-air element, because you obviously have a gift for gab.
Yeah.
And you do it in a way that makes people comfortable, which obviously is why you get cast for things. But was it easy for you to get your mind around the subject matter?
No, not at all. And that's why I say I didn't enjoy it, because I really didn't. Because entertainment news, is so much more. It's not about like the facts of the story, like this person got this movie, it's like then all of a sudden it's, they start wanting to peel back the onion. Or if there's any sort of like scandal in that person's previous life, you're forced to ask them that question so you can have that, like gotcha moment on camera, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for something that every other outlet isn't reporting on, So I didn't like asking those questions. I don't like putting somebody on the spot. I don't like making somebody uncomfortable. So I really did not, enjoy that aspect of it at all.
For me in particular, doing this podcast, a lot of criticism I've received is that I don't do that, is that I don't ask the question that people want to hear, which is getting into the gossip. And that's kind of that where you say dark space. I don't necessarily believe if somebody wants to offer it up, then that's okay.
Right.
But to dig in on somebody and delve into, them like trying to find themselves from a podcast or something like that.
Right.
I don't see it, but other people do, and it's fascinating. People would kill to be on Entertainment Tonight. And I say that in that context because it's a pinnacle of nightly entertainment where you're on the front line, where your face and smile connect the average, it's like People Magazine that has, content with it, right? You're connecting the average person to their biggest enthusiastic stars. Now today it's interesting where, to me, Entertainment Tonight has to really stay even more relevant because with social media, everybody has access to everybody, whether you communicate with people, but you can watch what they're doing. So if I'm a Chris Jacobs fan, I go on your Instagram, I know what you're doing, or at least what you're showing us you're doing by using your social media.
Yeah. And when I was at ET, that, social media was just in its infancy. I mean, I remember picking out a Twitter name while I was at ET, because everyone had to be on Twitter,
right.
Or I don't even know if Instagram, if I go back that far with Instagram, I can't remember or not. But it was a different world back then. And, people would tune in to get the stories, and it would come on at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or wherever in their local time zone. And nowadays, by the time these shows air, the story's already been out there on a million different platforms. So, you especially have to have some sort of different twist to it. But I appreciated my years there, but I'm glad to have moved on.
I remember you being on the NFL Network as well.
Yes. That was a job I really loved. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. How did you get lucky enough to transition from ET also over to more, which I think based on how you described your childhood and adulation of all those Chicago teams. So you love sports.
Yeah.
How did you get into the NFL Network?
So it's interesting. It was during the years that I was on ET and also doing Overhaulin. So I can't say no to any opportunity. It's like, I'll take jobs over sleep anytime. But I auditioned to be the host for NFL AM, which is now called Good Morning Football.
Right.
And it's shot here in LA in Culver City. So they actually offered me the job, but the shift is from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I was already doing Overhaulin at the time. So essentially I would not have slept. I mean, it was an impossibility to do the job. In fact, I'm glad I didn't take the job because I did do periodic guest host gigs on that show. And just one 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift messed up my body for, days. Right. So I slowly watched that crew kind of turn into zombies because, working from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., it does something to your body. You're supposed to be asleep during those hours. You're not supposed to be at work. So I eventually morphed it into a job as basically a news reader. I would do these things called NFL Up to the Minute. And I would do that probably once or twice a week. And that was a lot of fun because I was an on-air talent at NFL Network, which I took a lot of pride in. And I was able to actually, keep the other jobs that I had as well. I just kind of fit that job into the menu of jobs that I had. But I loved it. I worked at NFL Network for about 5 or 6 years. And it was a thrill because I'm a huge NFL fan.
For you, the opportunity staying in front of camera, obviously is, I would say, not easy for everyone. It's easy for you, or easier for you, as you said, to be comfortable in front of a camera. When you're doing something like Overhaulin, and it has a lot of, not necessarily moving parts, but it is telling a story, how much contribution can you have from a production perspective? Like, giving your feedback of what you would feel more comfortable in that space and taking every episode of the show?
Well, as the show went along and we got, further into future seasons, I became more involved from a production standpoint. And they would always, of course, take my suggestions, and I'd be in on the creative meetings, especially in playing the pranks. But it was a very kind of, grassroots feel at Overhaulin. It became very family-esque, because you're doing something very real. You're building a car. You can't fake that. You can't fake completely dismantling and rebuilding a car. So I was kind of in awe of these guys who were the ones building the car because, I'm not a mechanic. I'm a car guy. I love cars. I know a lot about cars, but if you bring me a car and say, hey, my alternator went out, can you switch it out for me? I would be like, no, I can't. I have no idea. I turn a couple wrenches and screwdrivers, but I leave the serious work to the experts. But certainly the production side of the show, I feel like I was, fairly well a part of and contributor to. And that's kind of served me well in the kind of things that I'm doing, nowadays on my own. So it was a good lesson in the behind the scenes aspect of production.
Would you say that you have always had a love for cars? I mean, like when you were in high school, were you into cars?
I definitely was. My dad and my brothers always had cool cars. My dad always had 911s. Which is why I love 911 so much now. I have a 911 that I'll never sell. And then my brother, Zach, had a 66 GTO convertible. And then my brother, Clay, was always into Trans Ams. He had a really cool Trans Am that he used to work on in the driveway.
Musclehead.
So I've always kind of had a love for cars. I didn't really know much about them until I started doing Overhauling. But, for the past 20 years, it's been a pretty good education. And I feel I like to say it like this. So if total car knowledge is 100, right. Chip Hughes to me is 100. He knows everything about cars. He can build cars. He can make cars. He can do everything. So before I started Overhauling, I was at maybe about a 10 or 15. And now I might be up to about a 45. So there's still a lot for me to learn, but I'm a lot farther along than when I started.
Has anybody ever amazed you, like somebody you would not think, so truth be told, you play golf, and Chris and I have spent a lot of fun time, which not enough, playing golf. And where you're a member of a golf club, it I would say is the best hang in golf. Lakeside Golf Club. If you're in the golf world or love golf, Lakeside and Toluca Lake, which is, I would say, walking distance from Warner Brothers, right? You're almost hundreds of yards from Universal Studios.
Yep.
So you're kind of in that space where they created a golf property for the entertainment industry to keep the guys.
They absolutely did. I mean, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby were a couple of our very early members, and that's exactly why they did it. I mean, the original name of the course is Lakeside Golf Club of Hollywood, California. So they certainly did. And you're right. I mean, I live in Toluca Lake, and I work. One of the jobs I have is at Warner Brothers, and I walk over there. You can see Universal Studios up on the hill. Disney is just about a mile away. So, NBC has all their studios where, like, Leno used to do the Tonight Shows right down the street. So it really is right in the middle of production, the center of the production web. And, we like that a lot at Lakeside. And you're right, it is one of the best hangs in the world. And I would put Lakeside up against any other place on the planet for membership and course combination. It's the best of both worlds.
For you, growing up in Chicago and loving sports and entertainment, where I was going with, especially about Lakeside, do you ever get an awe of being in the environment? You work in the space you have for a sustained period. So it's not as if this is new to you, but to just look around and see the history of the entertainment world where you live. And then you go to a golf course kind of rich in that history where, when people ask me all the time, oh, you're Hollywood. I'm like, I live in San Diego. I'm the farthest point you can be. Yeah. I drive up to LA. But right. Where you are, as you described, is an epicenter of creative talent, people who are in the space. And it's got to be extremely gratifying and also humbling because you do interface with people that you've may not have met before, but you're probably interacting with a lot of people that candidly you may have always admired. Does that fan of side of you ever kind of pop out and go, hey, I'd really like to chat with so-and-so or see so-and-so?
Yeah. I mean, especially Chicago sports luminaries, just the other day I played in a charity tournament at Lakeside, and one of the other celebrities in it was Joe Madden, who was the manager of the Cubs when they won the World Series in 2016. And I had met him several times before. In fact, he's a car guy. He used to have a Galaxy 500 that he painted to look like the one that we did on Overhaulin. So we were kind of a fan.
He was familiar with what you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I threw out the first pitch at Wrigley Field one time, and someone came over and said, "Hey, Joe wants to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh man, am I in trouble?" The manager wants to talk to me. So we went over and he told me what a car fan he was, and we chatted for 5 or 10 minutes, which was like the coolest thing on the planet to me because I'm like leaning into the dugout talking to Joe Madden at the top of the steps. But yeah,
you thought he was going to offer you a contract. I really like the way you threw out that pitch.
Left field? No, how about left out? Yeah, so I definitely, as soon as I heard he was there at Lakeside, I went and looked for him and fanned on him for a while. And, because it's like all sports, Chicago sports luminaries. I was lucky enough to play golf with Richard Dent at Lakeside one time. Had Jake Arrieta and Ian Happ and Craig Kimbrell out one time. That was very cool. David Ross, actually, the Cubs are in town next week, and I unfortunately am not going to be in town. I'm coming back into town, and I'm just going to be able to catch the last game. But David Ross, we're kind of buddies on Instagram. He reached out to me, and he had wanted to play golf together, but I'm unfortunately going to be out of town, so that's a missed opportunity. But I would have been very, very happy doing that.
So it is a still an exciting opportunity for you to meet your childhood, kind of satisfy your childhood dreams. And the reason I mentioned that, do when you are just cruising around wherever you are in the country, you're recognized, but you could be recognized in that auto space. I mean, do guys like mechanics and people in the space just come up to you and want to talk to you about their car?
Of course. I mean, it happens literally almost every day. And, especially when I'm at Mecum Auction, I have 100 of those conversations over the course of the couple of days that we're doing the auction. But, yeah, I get recognized a lot out and about, and I'm always happy to have a conversation with anybody about whatever they want to talk about. I mean, that's the reason that I have a career, is because people watch the shows that I'm on. So I'm
Right.
not above,
and they feel like they know you.
Yeah, I'm not above talking to anybody. People send me messages sometimes on social media and say, "Oh, I saw you here, but I didn't want to bother you." I said, "Hey, bug me, say hi." I mean,
Yeah.
you watch my show. It's like I'm putting myself out there to hopefully entertain you. And if you want to say hi to me and say, "Hey, you've been entertained and you enjoy the stuff," of course I want to hear that. I mean, who doesn't love hearing that they're doing a good job at what they're trying to accomplish?
You departed the space a little bit when you did Long Lost Family. When I say departed, it's not an automotive, it's not sports, it's not really what your core passion had been. However, you really, dove into Long Lost Family. Describe that experience and what that meant to you.
Well, Long Lost Family is probably the project that I'm most proud of. It's my story. I was adopted. I reconnected with my birth family when I was in my early 20s. And that's the reason that I got the job. Same goes for my my co-host, Lisa Joyner. She's an adoptee, had also reconnected with her birth family. So we were able to offer a perspective of relation to these people that we were trying to help out. And it was an amazing experience. I wish we were still doing the show. They decided not to bring us back in November of 2019, right before the pandemic hit. So I don't know if we would have been able to continue anyway with all the travel restrictions, because it was a travel based show. We would go to all these small towns where these people were located. But it was an unbelievable experience, and fulfilling. To be honored with the task of being able to reconnect these people. And, to a certain extent, the show was produced. You have to do, pre-production in order to make sure the show is going to work. But there are two moments on the show that absolutely could not be faked and was just such pure emotion that I challenge anybody to find a more feel-good moment in entertainment. And those two moments are when myself or Lisa would tell the person that we have found who they're looking for. And the second moment is when those two people see each other again for the first time, whether it be a parent and a child or two siblings. Those two moments could absolutely not be faked and were as genuine as it comes, and just pure emotion. Just so in the moment and undeniable. It's amazing. I mean, in fact, it's funny that you talk about guys coming up to me and telling me how much they love Overhaulin. Almost as many men come up to me and tell me how much they love Long Lost Family as women do. Obviously the show is, resonates more probably with women because of the mother instinct. But guys who've watched the show obviously feel the same emotion and come up to me and tell me how much they love that show. And it's amazing really how common the adoption story is. We talk about 6 degrees of separation between people. It's probably about 3 or 4 degrees of separation from having experience with adoption, whether it be them themselves or a friend or someone else in their family. So it's much more common than people think. And it's become a lot less taboo also. When I was born in 1970, I was born in Illinois, obviously. And Illinois is what they call a closed state. So all of the records are sealed. It's secret. And it all stems from this, almost like a shame factor, like there's something wrong because of the adoption situation. And so I think as the years have gone by, that attitude has really progressed and it's loosened up. And now at least people these days have the option. The information is more readily available to them versus when I started looking in the late 80s and early 90s, there was nowhere to go. You know, I mean, the internet was barely beginning. There was no social media. You know, people barely had cell phones. I remember when I found out that I was able to reconnect with my birth mom, I came home and found a message on my answering machine. That's how long ago this is. And the woman who I had connected with at this adoption location agency called me and left a message on my machine telling me that, you know, she had found who I was looking for. So times have definitely changed. Ancestry.com, who was our sponsor on that show, was obviously a huge, huge resource and a help, and found for us most of the people that we were trying to find for those we were trying to help out. And yeah, I mean, if you've never seen Long Lost Family and you want a good emotional outlet, have some Kleenex at hand, because you will definitely cry.
For you, was it easy or hard to have that discussion of finding your biological family or your biological mom to your adoptive parents? Because you speak to your adopted family with the same emotion.
Yeah.
I would say you're descriptive of your family in Chicago. No, if you didn't tell anybody you were adopted, no one would even come to that conclusion.
There is no difference.
How supportive was that?
Very,
was your
100%? 100%. So to answer your question, it was very easy talking to them about it, because they were very, very supportive of my searching. They were very understanding. And so, you know, yeah, that part was easy, and just kind of, it was very serendipitous. It was meant to be the way that I found her and when I found her, and then, you know, obviously giving rise to this other, employment opportunity through Long Lost Family. We made, I want to say we made 61 episodes of Long Lost Family over 5 seasons. So, it was a great show to be a part of, and
labor of love for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I tell people when they mention it. Yeah.
For you transitioned back to your other passion, or your passion with Motor Trends, right?
Yep.
And doing, as you said, whether it be the endorsements, working with different brands.
Well, you know, you say transition back to, there wasn't a transition back to, because all these things were happening at the same time. The entire time I was doing Long Lost, I was also hosting auctions. So, and also, you know, doing a couple other things too. So there was a time when I actually was doing the auctions, Long Lost Family, and Overhaulin. So I had 3 different jobs, plus anything else that Discovery would throw at me in the one-off space. You know, I'm kind of their go-to guy when it comes to hosting live events. You know, I've hosted the space launches and the tightrope walking across the Grand Canyon, and unearthing a mummy in Egypt. I mean, I've done some unbelievable things over the course of my career, and I'm very thankful for it.
Long Lost Family, to me, for you, had this kind of drive, right? It's this passionate drive.
Yeah.
And when people see you, whether it be Overhaulin or any of the shows, even the live, is as silly as it may be, as you describe those Discovery shows, you know, that you take your job pretty seriously, and people find credibility in how you present that. And that's why you're always hired, which is good. But from a passion perspective, if you said, you know, I wish there was a show about this, to capture that emotion, do you sit back and think about those kind of things?
I mean, you know, yes and no. You know, I'm always trying to create content myself, you know, because then you have ownership of it, which is you know, a huge difference between being hired to do a job and then creating something yourself.
Right.
So yeah, you know, I mean, I'm just constantly looking for ways to stay busy and you know, and generate income. You know, I mean, I've got a 1-year-old now, so it's like retirement isn't anywhere in the near future for me. I want to keep going for as long as possible, and you know, provide as good of a life as I can for my family.
For you, the social media, you mentioned that is really a great, whether it be YouTube or Instagram Live and things of that space. Is that exciting to you to try to get your head around social media and trying to immerse yourself into that?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's kind of a necessary evil. You feel like you gotta keep feeding the machine,
right?
In order to stay in the algorithm. So yeah, there's a certain sense of pressure. Sometimes it comes very easily and it just flows, and there's other times where it's like, oh my God, I haven't posted in 2 days. I gotta throw something out there to stay in the cycle. So
right. Like for me, it's like I'm walking the dog and I go by flowers. I'm like, look at those flowers. That's great.
Right. But then, at the same time, you got to go, okay, is people going to find this annoying? Is this, relevant? Or on the flip side, is this too salesy? Right. I just try to stay organic and share parts of my life that are interesting, hopefully, and that's not too much. I mean, like my daughter Scarlett is like the cutest thing in the world, so she's an easy go-to. I mean, if I haven't put something else,
she is. She's like, when you post content on your daughter, if you don't get a smile on your face, something's wrong with you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So she's an easy one. If I'm stuck for content, I can always throw a picture of her up there, and it's it gets a lot of attention, which is
both men nice. And women. They're like, oh, look at her. Yeah. It's that's where I go with our with our dog. It's like you got a cute puppy.
Yeah, I mean, come on, who doesn't love dogs and babies? I mean,
exactly. Well, Chris, thank you so much for visiting with us and kind of shedding a little light. You're that guy that seems all shucks about your career, but I would say you don't sustain it for as long as you have without working really hard, putting yourself in the right position, and not making any enemies. And you're pretty good at all of those things.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you saying so.
Yeah, I really do. I believe that. First, we have a mutual friend who introduced us through golf, and that was my perception of you right out of the gate. Is there's a guy that kind of knows how to navigate and not burn any bridges. And too many people we both know, careers kind of come short because they burn those bridges, getting loose. They can't remember to stay on their path, on their lane correctly. Yeah. But you do if anybody is listening and you're trying to figure out or try to tell their kids what to do and get into broadcasting or get into the space that Chris, try to look back at his shows and what he's talking about, and you'll see somebody who actually navigates correctly, and that puts you in a really good place for success. So, Chris Jacobs, thank you so much for coming on the path here, and can't wait to see you and play a little golf.
Absolutely. I'll see you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to write us on thepathhere.com to have one of your questions featured on a future episode. You can follow me on Instagram @ScottSavlo. If you want to send us a tweet or follow us on Instagram, it's @thepathhere podcast. Hey, I'm Scott Savlov, and you've been listening to The Path Here.